G-Man Boxing. Do you know what I mean? Every single live he donates. I see him on other lives donating. He's got the bag on it.
Alright, here's an interesting little piece here in the Daily Star, which is a newspaper in the UK. They're reporting that Amir Khan versus Kell Brook are trying to secure a deal for a February fight as talks continue between the bitter British rivals. The pair are eyeing up a date in February the 19th, most likely in Manchester. How close is Manchester to Sheffield and Bolton? Because they're both guys are from, so they're obviously doing it probably in neutral territory. How close is Manchester to either city, respectively? Because my knowledge of geography in the UK is shocking. I actually thought Bournemouth, which I know now was the south of England, was the north side of England. You know, my geography is not great in general. I thought Gibraltar was in Portugal at one stage, so yeah. Someone wants to correct me and let me know if it's near both cities, so Bolton, where Amir Khan is, and Sheffield, where Kell Brook is. But they're talking about Manchester. It says, but talks are still continuing despite claims the contract for both fighters has been signed. Key points, of course, such as purse splits, are said to be sorted, but there are still other contractual issues to be resolved. When they say I wonder what they mean. I would imagine potentially weight could be an issue. I was going to say maybe who walks the ring first, but maybe I think Kell Brook would walk the ring first happily if he thought he'd get Amir Khan in there, to be honest with you. But I'd imagine maybe the weight, maybe Kell Brook physically can't do welterweight and Amir Khan potentially can. And maybe they're trying to get that in, you know, as a stipulation, potentially a rehydration clause, who knows. I'm just surmising. I'm just, from the outside looking in, that could be what it is, you know. It says stumbling blocks are said to be minor. Wouldn't you know, that's the very next thing. Of course it would be. A minor enough that they can be sorted in minutes. I really should read these before I start making assumptions, shouldn't I? Because I make all the assumptions and then I read in the next paragraph they're minor issues. Of course they are. But there are still fears the fight could fall through, apart if the stubborn pair keep their current stance. Okay. Is there anything else? Oh yeah. Well, I'll read it nonetheless. Amir Khan, 34, has not fought since July 2019. I remember that card when he fought the overmatched Billy the Kid Dib. Yeah, I remember that well. That was that card, looking back in retrospect, was a funny little card. Amir Khan versus Billy Dib was just a real kind of fight. A lightweight versus a welterweight. You had Huey Fury versus Sam Peters. I mean, that was a bizarre fight if ever I seen one. It was like watching someone in slow motion and then watching Huey Fury. And then you had Prince Patel getting the beating over Miguel Vasquez. That was a fun little, looking back in hindsight, and it was on Channel 5 as well. It was free. Free here anyway in the UK, not sure about America, but that was a fun little card in hindsight. Amir Khan would have got an absolute rake of cash for that. I'd say he made more fighting Billy Dib than he did fighting Terence Crawford a few months before. Seriously, they were paying him extraordinary amounts. Brook has been out of the ring since his stoppage defeat to Terence Crawford last year. Their meeting is long past its sell-by date, you got that right, but there will still be interest in them facing each other. Is there anything else? Oh yes. The fight will either be at welterweight or a catchweight below light middleweight. Sky Sports and Boxer are said to be back in the fight, which will likely end up on pay-per-view. Matchroom promoter Eddie Hearn held talks to both fighters, but was not keen for them to face each other. Yeah, it says here, instead, Hearn wanted Khan facing rising prospect Conor Benn. Of course he did. Terms were not disclosed, but Khan made it clear he had no interest in the fight. The pair have both insisted they will only return to the ring again if it's to face each other. Their alternate option is to retire, but both are keen, for one final payday to settle a rivalry which has been simmering for years. Yeah, and that's pretty much it, to be honest with you. Yeah, they're going on about Eubank Jr. versus Liam Williams, which I still don't know what the crack is there. Right. Let's talk about this fight. It's looking likely. I did expect it either to be Sky or BT. I couldn't see Eddie Hearn going and putting a bid in for that fight. I really couldn't. Sky Sports pay-per-view. That fight in 2014, 2015 would have been brilliant. I would have favoured Kell Brook strongly in 2014, 2015. I think he would have knocked Amir Khan out with the right hand. Amir Khan always struggled a bit with right hands thrown from the orthodox stance. If you look at him, he was always better from the south. Well, he was always better at avoiding the southpaw left as opposed to the orthodox right. Maybe it was whatever way. Maybe it's the angles. Maybe he was just used to it from the Amir. I don't know. But I think at that stage, Kell Brook would have won the fight. Having seen Kell Brook's last fight about this time last year against Crawford, he looked a shell of himself. His punch resistance seems gone. Time seemed gone. He just looked a shell of himself. A shell of the Kell Brook that I watched for many, many years. You know, since the Carson Jones days and even prior to that, he looked a shell of himself in that Terence Crawford fight. Now, Amir Khan, it's a different one. Against Crawford in 2019, he did not look good. But he had that win against Billy Dib. And I'm not saying, he looked good against Dib. Of course he would. That was a gross mismatch. But I just don't know where he's at. Because it's been over 2 years, I don't know where he's at. So has he regressed even further? Because he wasn't at his prime. Probably since the Canelo fight. He's probably been past it. Maybe even since the Danny Garcia fight was probably last time we saw Khan near his best. So, well, actually, no, I tell a lie. Actually, David Alexander was probably the best performance of his career. And after that, I don't think was ever as good. I don't know where Amir Khan's at. I have an idea where Kell Brook's at. I think it's a much more closer fight now. And I'm someone who I believe there's entertainment to be had at all levels. Yes, I would have loved to have seen this in their prime. Of course I would have. But there's something, and maybe this is a very cynical way of looking at it. Maybe it's not. I don't know. But when you have two fighters who are equally over the hill, and I'm going to assume both of them are probably at the same level in terms of their regression as fighters, you do tend to get entertaining fights. You really do. You tend to get entertaining fights in it. Both guys will get paid very good for this. Amir Khan and Kell Brook, whilst they're not the names they used to be, that fight, I believe it will still have a little bit of pulling power. I'll watch it. Will I pay for it? Probably not. But you never know, there might be a decent undercard. Boxer might bring out all the stops to get the undercard as good as they can. Who knows? I probably wouldn't pay for it, but I would definitely tune in for it, you know. In fact, if it's pay-per-view, I have on my phone 2 very good links to what I call promoters' enemies. And I think you know what they are, because you're not really supposed to, YouTube. But I think we all know what they are. Promoters' enemies. It means I watch pay-per-views without having to fork out. That's what we call them, to be old promoter's enemy. So I'll probably use that to watch it, or one of them anyway, to watch it. But I will still watch it. Definitely. I think there's entertainment in this fight, and I've said it once. I've said this on live streams a few times, and I stand by this statement. When I hear Kell Brook, Amir Khan, maybe it's just me, but it brings me back to a time when I was just so in love with boxing. Not to say I'm not now. Obviously, I love the sport. But in 2014, 2015, I mean, literally, I was boxing crazy. I mean, it's probably a good job I wasn't doing videos back then, because I'd probably be spamming people with videos. Because I was just, any fight, I'd watch it. Even if it was against 2 journeymen, I'd watch it. Nowadays, there's not as many fights nowadays. Well, there is, but they're a little bit harder to get. And I just don't seem to have that. I still love the sport. Maybe it's because I was doing a bit of boxing at the time, I don't know. But at the time, Amir Khan and Kell Brook was constantly being talked about. And it kind of brings me back to those days, if you get me. Maybe that's a strange way of looking at it, but it does bring me back to them. And I think that'll have a little bit of rekindle of it if this fight gets announced for February. I'll watch it, for sure. Hopefully it's a good undercard. I think both guys, the build-up will be good fun. Amir Khan, Kell Brook. At one stage, after about 2016, when both guys fought at middleweight, and both guys lost actually to Canelo and Golovkin respectively, I thought this fight was dead. We'll never see this fight. Well, never say never. I mean, I sure as hell never thought we'd see Canelo at cruiserweight. We might very well see it next year as well. Crazy. So never say never in the sport of boxing. But Kell Brook and Amir Khan, look, I will watch it. I will watch it. For sure. Won't pay for it. Probably won't pay for it anyway. We'll see what the undercard's like. They might even get... You know what they might do? They might not put them in competitive fights necessarily, but they might get someone like Chris Eubank Jr. Could you imagine Chris Eubank Jr. versus Liam Williams if it gets rescheduled on the undercard of Amir Khan, Kell, Brook? Now that gets interesting. That's an interesting card all of a sudden, isn't it? So who knows? They might pull something like that. Maybe pull a masterstroke. That's my thoughts. In terms of who I think could win the fight, oh jeez. As I said, 14-15 Kell Brook right now. Oh man, right now it's probably a pick'em fight, but I would lean towards. I think Kell Brook would still win it. If his timing is anyway there, he might be able to acclimatise to the speed, and I think he'll catch Amir Khan with a counter. That's what I think will happen, but I could change my mind. I might see him training. I was saying that I don't read too much into training montages. For example, Alexander Povetkin in the Dylan White rematch. If you look at his public workouts, he looked very good in those public workouts. He did not look good in the ring. So I don't tend to take too much into training, but we'll wait and see. That's my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comment section. If you could, please smash the like button. It does help. Subscribe, of course, if you haven't already. Hit the notification bell. Helps your boy out. For now, lads and lassies, I'll talk to you. Peace.